The aroma of simmering tomato sauce and garlic infused the air of La Famiglia, our family restaurant, a symphony of scents that always soothed my soul. John, my husband for 3 decades, sat across from me, meticulously folding his napkin into a geometric origami masterpiece. "Honey," I said, tucking a wayward strand of hair behind my ear. "You've been working late an awful lot these past few weeks. Everything all right at the hotel expansion?" John looked up, a flicker of something unreadable crossing his features, before he settled into his usual confident smile. "Just some loose ends, nothing major. You know how it gets." We knew all right. Our entire lives were woven into the fabric of Isabella and John Incorporated. La Famiglia, the cozy corner hotel next door, and our chain of laundromats, all testaments to our shared dreams, countless arguments, and the relentless march of time. We were a team, a well-oiled machine that had weathered every storm life threw our way. Or at least, that's what I thought. "Maybe delegate some of it," I suggested, swirling the ruby red wine in my glass. "We have a great team, remember?" John chuckled, the sound lacking its usual warmth. "Relax, love. Everything's under control. Besides," he leaned in conspiratorially, his voice dropping to a husky whisper, "I might have a surprise for you soon." Intrigue sparked in my chest, momentarily pushing aside the nagging suspicion that had been growing like a weed in my gut. "A surprise, huh? Don't leave me hanging." John winked, a mischievous glint in his eye. "Not just yet. Let's just say you deserve a little R&R after slaving away for all these years." The following weeks were a flurry of activity. John orchestrated everything, flights, reservations, even hiring extra help at the laundromats. The surprise, it turned out, was a solo trip for me. A whole month in South Africa, a country I'd dreamt of visiting for years. "Just you and some well-deserved relaxation," John had explained, his eyes holding a warmth that had been absent lately. "No work, no worries, just you and the breathtaking scenery." The day of my departure arrived. John, looking oddly nervous, helped me into the cab. As I pulled away from the curb, I cast a final glance at our house, bathed in the golden hues of the afternoon sun. South Africa unfolded like a breathtaking tapestry before me. I documented it all on social media, a relentless stream of photos chronicling my solo journey. Back home, John's "missing you" texts felt hollow, but I pushed it down, attributing it to the stress of running the businesses alone. Finally, after a month of exhilarating freedom, I came back home, ready to return to the familiar rhythm of life. Stepping off the plane, the first thing I did was switch on my phone. A torrent of messages flooded my inbox, friends oohing and awing over my pictures, John's usual "welcome back" text conspicuously absent. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. Dismissing it as jet lag, I hailed a cab and headed home. The familiar street, lined with towering oak trees, brought a wave of comfort. But as I approached the house, a sickening feeling washed over me. My key wouldn't turn in the lock. Panic clawed at my throat. I jiggled the handle, shoved the key in again, frustration building with each failed attempt. Finally, pulling out my phone, I dialed John's number. It rang once, twice, then a cold voice answered the phone. "Hello?" "John, it's me, Isabella," I stammered, my voice tight with confusion. "Why won't my key open the door?" A beat of silence followed, then a sigh. "Isabella, look, there's no easy way to say this." John's voice, usually warm and comforting, was flat and emotionless. "I sold the house." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Sold the house? What are you talking about?" My voice cracked with disbelief. "Without even discussing it with me?" Another sigh, tinged with what sounded like annoyance. "There's a lot to unpack here, honey. Look, the truth is, I filed for divorce. We need to split things up." The phone almost slipped from my grasp. "Divorce? John, what are you saying?" Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. "We've been married for 30 years. "I know, honey, I know," John said, his voice softening a touch. "But things change. I met someone, younger, and well." He didn't need to finish the sentence. The truth, ugly and raw, slammed into me. The missing texts, John's distant behavior, it all clicked into horrifying place. Someone younger, huh? I repeated, my voice laced with bitterness. And who might that be? Another pause, this time filled with an uncomfortable tension. It doesn't matter, Isabella. The important thing is, we need to move forward. The business will be split in half. You get the laundromats, and I'll keep La Famiglia and the hotel. The laundromats? That's all I get? Fury bubbled up inside me, hot and volatile. After all these years? The call ended abruptly, leaving me standing in the parking lot, the phone clutched in my hand like a useless relic. With trembling hands, I knocked on the door, the one that no longer belonged to me. This time it swung open a moment later. Standing in the doorway, a smug smile plastered across her face, was a woman I vaguely recognized, John's secretary, Sarah, clad in a skirt that defied the laws of physics and a top that screamed, bought on impulse. She looked like a caricature of everything I wasn't, young, blonde, and possessing a kind of airhead confidence that grated on my nerves. Isabella, she drawled, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. John mentioned you were coming back today. Where is he? I demanded, voice tight with barely contained anger. Sarah's smile widened, a touch too sharp around the edges. Out celebrating our new life, of course. But before you get any ideas, she added, her tone turning pointed, this house belongs to me now. She flourished a key in front of my face, the glint of metal mocking me. And him too, I suppose, I spat, unable to hold back the bitterness that stained my voice. Sarah's smile faltered for a second, a flicker of something akin to disgust crossing her heavily made-up face. But it was quickly replaced by a smug grin. Thanks for the well wishes, honey, she said, her voice laced with a condescending sweetness. Don't you dare call me honey. Gold digger, I growled, pushing past her into the house. The familiar space, once a haven of comfort, now felt alien. John's belongings had vanished, replaced by cheap, gaudy furniture that screamed Sarah's gaudy taste. Sarah's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Her eyes narrowed, and a vicious glint replaced the fake sweetness. Watch your mouth, old lady, she hissed, her voice surprisingly low and dangerous. For a moment, we stood there, locked in a silent battle of wills. Finally, Sarah broke the silence, her voice regaining its saccharine quality. Look, honey, she said, feigning concern. The cops are on their way to escort you out. John wouldn't want any trouble. The cops? I scoffed, disbelief momentarily overriding my anger. This is my house. Not anymore, sweetie, Sarah purred, stepping closer. Now get out before I have you removed. With a last glare at Sarah, I stormed out of the house, slamming the door with enough force to rattle the windows. Tears stung my eyes, a mixture of hurt and anger threatening to spill over. But I wouldn't give Sarah the satisfaction of seeing me cry. John might have taken the house, but he wouldn't break me. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out my phone, the screen illuminating my tear-streaked face. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a lifeline thrown across the miles. It was Ethan, my son, the architect building his own life in another city. Hearing his familiar voice, rough with sleep but laced with concern, was a balm on the rawness of my emotions. Tears streamed down my face as I poured out the story, John's betrayal, the house, the whole damn mess. Ethan's stunned silence was almost deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with anger. That old fool. Don't worry, Mom, I'm on the next flight. I'll kick his sorry, but myself. A smile, tinged with sadness, touched my lips. Thanks, honey, that means the world. But I can handle this. It's my fight. We talked for a while longer, his unwavering support a warm ember against the chill of betrayal. I rented a hotel room for a while. Sleep, however, was a stranger that night. My mind raced, fueled by anger and a sliver of hope. By morning, a plan had taken root, a fierce determination replacing the despair. The lawyer's office was a sterile haven of paperwork and legal jargon. Together, we unearthed the truth. John, in his haste, had forged my signature on the house sale documents. His little trick of selling the house to his mistress, Sarah, wouldn't hold water. The courtroom was a tense battleground. When the judge ruled in my favor, returning the house to me and splitting the business fairly, a wave of relief washed over me. It wasn't a complete victory, the laundromats paled in comparison to the hotel and restaurant John kept, but it was a start. The key felt heavy and satisfying in my hand as I approached the house. The front door swung open before I could even knock. There they stood, John and Sarah, faces stormy with frustration. John opened his mouth to speak, but the words died on his lips. "Shouldn't you two lovebirds be somewhere else celebrating your new life?" I asked, my voice laced with steely sarcasm. John sputtered, his face morphing between rage and disbelief. Sarah, her carefully applied makeup cracking, threw me a venomous look. "You won't get away with this," she hissed. I simply shrugged. "Actually, honey, I already have." 2 months had passed since the courthouse victory, and tonight, I was the guest of honor at the annual City Hope Charity Gala. Stepping out of the limousine, I took a deep breath, the cool night air tingling on my skin. Diamonds sparkled at my throat, a glittering shield against lingering vulnerability. Then I saw them. John and Sarah, a grotesque tableau of arrogance in the doorway. "Isabella," John drawled, his voice dripping with a false cordiality that made me want to spit. "Looking, well." He didn't actually believe that, of course. Revenge, a dish best served cold, simmered in my veins. "John," I replied, my voice cool and controlled. "Try harder." He opened his mouth to retort, but I cut him off. "Don't worry," I said, my gaze flickering to Sarah. "You have each other now. A perfect match of shallowness." John's smile faltered for a second, then he puffed out his chest. "At least I have a young wife," he declared loudly, his voice aimed more at the gathering crowd than me. "Someone beautiful, unlike—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A flicker of anger sparked within me. Time for a little public education. As I was escorted towards the stage, the microphone felt heavy in my hand, a weapon more potent than any diamond. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "Many of you know me as a businesswoman, but tonight, I want to share a different story, a story about betrayal, resilience, and ultimately, hope." Taking a deep breath, I recounted the events of the past few months, the locked door, the forged signature, the fight for what was rightfully mine. A hush fell over the audience, their eyes glued to me. "And that's why," I concluded, my voice steady, "I've decided to use my experience to help other women caught in similar situations. Tonight, I'm announcing the launch of the Isabella Foundation, a safe haven for women facing financial hardship due to divorce or separation." The room erupted in applause, a wave of support washing over me. John, his face flushed with humiliation, shrunk back into the shadows. Sarah, her carefully constructed facade crumbling, looked like a storm cloud about to burst. The charity gala had been a turning point. John and Sarah slunk away like scolded puppies, but their defeat was far from sweet. The next few days were a living hell. My phone buzzed incessantly with a barrage of vile texts from Sarah, each message a venomous attack on my looks, my age, anything she could dredge up to try and hurt me. Ignoring the digital bile, I called John. "Get your mistress under control," I demanded, my voice laced with steel. John's response was a cold laugh. "You made your bed, Isabella. Now lie in it." That callous response was all the confirmation I needed. John wasn't just content with leaving me, he actively wanted to see me fail. Fine. Two could play that game. John had kept the flashier La Famiglia restaurant, while I ended up with the chain of laundromats. Not exactly a fair split, but I wasn't about to let it break me. Digging deep, I sold a few of the less profitable laundromats. With the cash, I did some intel gathering and discovered that surprise, Sarah was now managing La Famiglia. A slow smile spread across my face. It was time for some good old-fashioned competition. Right next door to La Famiglia, a dusty old diner was up for sale. It wasn't much to look at, but the location was perfect. This was going to be my redemption song. The diner underwent a metamorphosis. Gone were the greasy booths and chipped mugs. In its place emerged a vibrant, modern eatery, Isabella's Kitchen. I poached most of John's best staff. Turns out, they weren't exactly thrilled about working for a screeching banshee like Sarah. I knew La Famiglia's weaknesses: overpriced, outdated menu, and terrible online presence. Isabella's Kitchen offered a fresh, seasonal menu at competitive prices. We launched a sleek website with online ordering and a generous loyalty program. The grand opening was a roaring success. The place buzzed with energy, a stark contrast to the gloomy silence next door. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Customers who used to frequent La Famiglia for lack of options now had a superior choice. Sarah, predictably, showed up at my door, a screeching harpy, demanding to see a manager. The security guard, a burly ex-marine I'd hired, took one look at her and politely suggested she take a hike. A year later, La Famiglia was a boarded-up shell, a testament to John's poor taste in both mistresses and business partners. As for me, Isabella's Kitchen was thriving, a beacon of success built on the ashes of betrayal. John, if you were listening, this one's for you. Never underestimate a woman scorned. A few months later, Ethan, my architect son, burst into my office, a glint of mischief in his eyes. We'd grown closer since my whole rebirth ordeal, and his visits were always a welcome break from the daily grind. This time, though, the news he carried was unusual. "Mom," he began, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Guess what the city's planning?" "Spill it, kiddo," I said, putting down my pen, intrigued by the hushed tone. "They're building a sewage treatment plant right next to Dad's fancy hotel." A slow smile crept across my face. John, bless his clueless heart, had poured all his remaining money into that hotel. It was his pride and joy, the last bastion of his successful post-divorce life. This little tidbit from Ethan, however, felt like the universe handing me a golden ticket. "Are you sure?" I asked, wanting to confirm the sweet, sweet karma. "Positive," Ethan grinned. "Saw the blueprints myself. Apparently, it's prime location for these treatment things. Not exactly the view Dad was banking on for his luxury experience." The image of tourists lounging by a pool while the aroma of raw sewage wafted through the air was enough to make me snort with laughter. "Should I tip him off?" Ethan asked, a mischievous glint in his eyes. The temptation was strong. But I remembered the abuse his mistress had hurled at me, and the pity disappeared from my heart. "Nah," I said, a steely glint entering my own eyes. "Let him stew in his own ignorance. This one's on him." John, ever the gambler, had also taken out a hefty loan to expand the hotel, further tying himself to the sinking ship. The news about the sewage plant hit the local news a few months later, causing a predictable public outcry. Tourists canceled reservations in droves, and John's once gleaming hotel became a ghost town. One morning, I woke up to news that the hotel had officially shut down. John, drowning in debt and a bitter taste of defeat, had vanished. My heart didn't exactly do a victory dance. After all, the man was still the father of my son, but a sense of quiet satisfaction settled in. Karma, it seemed, had a wicked sense of humor. Isabella's Kitchen, meanwhile, was thriving. Life, it seemed, had a funny way of balancing the scales. John may have gotten his young wife, but I got the last laugh, and a thriving business, to boot. As I raised a glass of champagne in celebration that night, I silently toasted to a future filled with delicious food, loyal customers, and the sweet taste of well-deserved revenge. Isabella's Kitchen wasn't just a restaurant anymore, it was my muse. The anger that fueled its creation had morphed into a deep passion for creating a unique dining experience. The real joy came from the happy faces around the tables, the satisfied murmurs about the food, the buzz of conversation that filled the air each night. Ethan, my ever-supportive son, saw this shift in me. He knew the story behind the restaurant, but also saw the potential it held. "Mom," he said one day, his eyes gleaming with a familiar architect's fire. "Have I ever shown you my crazy ideas for expanding Isabella's kitchen?" "Crazy?" I asked, intrigued. Ethan had a wild streak when it came to design, a quality I both admired and feared in equal measure. He pulled out a tablet, his finger flying across the screen. What unfolded was a vision that left me speechless. The existing building would be incorporated into a new, modern structure that defied categorization. Glass walls offered diners panoramic views of the city, while the rooftop transformed into a lush, open-air garden complete with cascading waterfalls and hidden nooks. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, a bold statement that screamed Isabella's kitchen. "Whoa, kiddo," I breathed, a grin splitting my face. "That's insane." "Exactly," Ethan grinned back. "We can create an experience, Mom. Not just a place to eat, but a destination." We dove headfirst into the project. The construction phase was a whirlwind of activity, the constant hum of machinery a soundtrack to my excitement. Finally, the day arrived, the grand reopening of Isabella's Kitchen 2.0. The reaction was beyond anything I could have imagined. Journalists clamored for interviews, bloggers dubbed it the city's new architectural landmark, and customers lined up around the block for a chance to experience the transformed space. Business boomed, reservations became a necessity, and the success was intoxicating. As for John, well, rumors swirled that Sarah, the young gold digger, had finally gotten bored and flown the coop. He was apparently drowning in debt and, according to Ethan, had become a social pariah. Months melted into a blur of activity. Isabella's Kitchen 2.0 was a runaway success, the reservations booked solid weeks in advance. Ethan, my ever-enthusiastic partner in crime, was a whirlwind of ideas, constantly brainstorming new locations and menu concepts. The dream of a restaurant chain, once a distant flicker, was now a very real possibility. One crisp autumn afternoon, however, the past came knocking on my door, quite literally. It was John, looking like a deflated balloon, his once polished suit hanging off him like ill-fitting armor. The arrogance that used to define him was gone, replaced by a weary desperation. "Isabella," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "Can I come in?" "What do you want, John?" My voice was cool, devoid of the anger that used to simmer just beneath the surface. He shuffled in uninvited, his eyes darting around the tastefully decorated foyer. I need your help." The audacity of it almost made me laugh. This man, who had betrayed me, lied to me, and tried to take everything I had, now expected me to be his savior. "Help?" I echoed, my voice laced with disbelief. "After everything you've done?" John slumped onto a nearby chair, the bravado completely gone. "I messed up, Isabella," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "Big time. Sarah left me high and dry, the hotel's gone belly up, and I'm drowning in debt." A part of me, a very small part, felt a flicker of pity. But mostly, I felt a cold satisfaction. Karma, it seemed, had a hefty right hook. "So you want what?" I asked, my voice devoid of sympathy. "A handout? A loan?" John shook his head, a flicker of something like shame crossing his face. "No. I miss you. I miss the life we had." The laugh that escaped my lips was devoid of humor. "That life is gone, John. And you blew it up yourself." He looked like a kicked dog, his shoulders slumped in defeat. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. "There's nothing I can do for you, John," I said finally, my voice firm. "You need to make your own bed now, and lie in it." He stood up slowly, defeat etched on his face. "I understand," he mumbled, shuffling towards the door. I wanted you to know I was sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix things, John," I said, the last vestige of pity evaporating. "It never did." He nodded, his face a mask of misery, and stepped out into the cool afternoon air. I watched him go, a strange sense of peace settling over me. Life, it seemed, had a funny way of working itself out. Standing there, the scent of success swirling around me, I knew one thing for certain, Never give up on yourself, fight for what's yours, and never underestimate the power of a good revenge dish, served piping hot with a side of self-made success.